Translation. Unable to see him, Hiranyakashipu said, "I have searched the entire universe, but I could not find Vishnu, who has killed my brother. Therefore he must certainly have gone to that place from which no one returns. In other words, he must be now dead." Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Atheists generally follow the Buddha philosophical conclusion that at death everything is finished. Hiranyakashipu, being an atheist, thought this way. Because Lord Vishnu was not visible to him, he thought that the Lord was dead. Even today many people follow the philosophy that God is dead. But God is never dead. Even the living entity with part and parcel never dies. Na jayate mriyate vakadachit. For the soul there is never birth or death. This is a statement of Bhagavad Gita 2.20. Even the ordinary living entity never takes birth or dies. What then is to be said of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the chief of all living entities? He certainly never takes his birth or dies. Ajopi Sanavyayatma, Bhagavad Gita 4.6. But the Lord and the living entities exist as unborn, inexhaustible personalities. Thus Hiranyakashipu's conclusion that Vishnu was dead was wrong. As indicated by the word Yato Nivartate Puman, there is certainly a spiritual kingdom, and if the living entity goes there, he never returns to this material world. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Chaktva deham panarjanma, naitimam etiso Arjuna. Materially speaking, every living entity dies. Death is inevitable. But those who are karmis, jnanis and yogis return to this material world after death, whereas bhaktas do not. Of course, if a bhakta is not completely perfect, he takes birth in the material world again, but in a very exalted position, either in a rich family or in a family of pure Brahmins. Suchinam Srimatam Gehe. Just to finish his development in spiritual consciousness. Those who have completed the course of Krishna consciousness and are free from material desire return to the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yad Yatvana Nivartante Tat Dharma Pramamamaha Mama. Here the same fact is stated, Yato Nivartate Puman. Any person who goes back home, back to Godhead, does not return to this material world. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Vaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishavanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudhi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here, Lord Vamandev is glorifying a demon, Bali Maharaj. And Bali Maharaj is very much impressed by the appearance of Vamanadeva. Why? Because he's effulgent. He's different from anything else that he usually contacts. He's living with demons, so usually demons are not so effulgent. I remember when I first came to the temple, it wasn't a temple, it was a university program. I wasn't at university, but they held it in the university. And I was waiting very nervously, and then this devotee walked in, and it was like the sun coming through the door. It was so bright-faced. It was Ranjor, actually, and I couldn't believe somebody could be so. And immediately that's attractive. Because what is attraction? We tend to think it's bodily features. But bodily features without effulgence, it's ugly. The real beauty is in the effulgence that comes from the soul. So this is why people find devotees attractive, that even though they may not be considered materially the best of the, best of the good-looking persons. So in that way, not just that our natural, when we follow this process, austerity, this is the wealth of the Brahmins, we start to become more enlivened and effulgent. But this attraction is also something which has to be done on a material level. That in the past, devotees have, I saw it the other day, odd socks. We've still got odd socks. Yeah. So what do you think a materialist thinks about that? What's the matter with these people? They can't even wear proper socks. So we have to, people are attracted to the way we dress. Everything we do, if it's in their eyes pucker, then they're attracted to that. Otherwise, it tends to go against everything else we do. And our behaviour as well. But Bali Maharaj's behaviour, Vamanadev's behaviour also was very attractive to Bali Maharaj. He was so attracted that he thought, I'll give this Brahmin anything. And so when we going about our daily activities, especially when we go outside, then people notice, people are looking. And everything we do is actually a chance to preach. Even unconsciously we preach. Did you know that? People know that we're devotees, and therefore they're watching. Especially if we go out in a dhoti. If we go out in a dhoti, then we have to be on our ball. We have to be on the ball. And therefore we set a good example. It's preaching to go out in a dhoti, go out in a sari, not just put karmis on and go outside thinking that, we're doing what they do. I think he gave a talk on this in Ukraine. He came to the Black Sea Festival. What is his name? Starts with D. Is into self-sufficiency. Danishwar. And he was saying, we don't become like them. He says, we stay our ground, we wear our clothes in any situation. We set the culture. He says, this keeps the consciousness of the movement also. We set this culture, and then we're able to influence society. And has anybody had an example when they've unconsciously made a good impression on somebody? Anybody, any feedback? Do you want to share it with us? Nobody.
A few times being on the street in books or iron-outs, people will come and say, they're different,
Yeah. Yeah, I once went to one door, and it was quite abrupt. He shut the door in my face just about. And so I walked away, and I a little bit miffed. But anyway, I just carried on, and I shut the gate, and I carried on walking. I went to the next house. When I finished there, I was going back up the path, and he was waiting for me at the top of the path. I thought, I'm in for a bit of a upset here. And then when I got there, he said, "Oh, thank you for shutting my gate." It's a simple thing. So, yeah, people are affected by little things. And so we have to be aware of that. Yeah? You got something to say?
Yeah, about my experience. What happened, I went on a Hawaii cruise
You went where?
Hawaii cruise in Hawaii in September. And I had one, a mother-daughter. I went with my daughter and we found one mother-daughter Indian in the sea. And they just had a baby Krishna with them. And brought everything, sweet and everything. And we were worshipping Krishna every day. And then she started talking about, do you go to the temple in England? Because they live in America. In USA, I said, yes, we do. And I gave them the card of ISKCON here because I do always take them with me and tell them, look, come and visit us when you come in here. And I gave it to them and she ended up telling me that my father, he made a point in America that he must start a vegetarian restaurant. And he started it and it flourished so much. And all of a sudden, because of the stress, he had a heart attack, a massive heart attack, and he just left the body. And now his mother is a widow, 70-year-old, and a daughter. And mother
Okay. Very good. So, yeah, so a good example. And what's another point in this? We've come to this verse now. This is more of a preamble to the verse, but here Vamadev is glorifying or flattering Bali Maharaj. So I was thinking about this, that when devotees flatter us or they glorify us, how should we feel? Because don't forget, if we're feeling elated, is that okay? What do you think? It's a tricky subject, isn't it? I was thinking that this is material consciousness, actually, isn't it? If we're feeling, proud about what we've done. So this glorification, it's a very tricky subject matter. Because it means that we're on the bodily platform, doesn't it? And this is what it's talking about. Hiranyakashipu, he was on the bodily platform. He was searching, and therefore he thought, Lord Vishnu is certainly dead. He was thinking in material terms. And so when the devotee is glorified in that way, he's also on the material platform. If he's letting that go to his head, we feel some from pride in what we do. First of all, there's false ego, isn't there? False ego. We're identifying with the body, and then we're proud of the acquisitions of this body, and we're proud of our mental ability. And anybody who, augments that, fans that spark, then we become more entangled. How should we be thinking? What's the right way to think? There's a nice verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Karmanye adhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma te sango hetubur ma te sango stu here karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the results. In other words, we should see anything we do, it's actually the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Any ability we have, any mental ability even, it's all coming from Krishna. And a devotee can see like that. If a devotee is not so, is not so experienced, then, and he keeps hearing that, we become proud. But after a little bit of experience in devotional service, we should be seeing that, actually I don't have any ability. And Krishna puts us into that situation. Sometimes he takes away any ability and we're completely useless. Sometimes he gives it. It's meant to bring us to that platform of being able to function without pride. Because pride's the biggest problem in any situation, isn't it? Even materialists say, pride goes before a great fall. So I was thinking about this, that there's one verse in the Bhagavad Gita actually, which just makes this point how dangerous this identification is. It says that while one enjoys sense gratification, so when we are glorified and we're enjoying that situation, it's a kind of subtle sense gratification, isn't it? While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. So it's not that we should walk about with long faces and people enjoy us, but we should be aware that we should feel satisfied that what's the way to feel that actually Krishna has empowered me. Krishna has empowered me to do this. We become more Krishna conscious. And Krishna, what's another way we look at it? That Krishna glorifies his devotees for their particular service. It's nothing to do with us. And in this way we can still remain pleased. And if we're in that consciousness, tendency is when somebody else is glorified, we're not so enthusiastic. Has anybody that feeling? And when we are glorified, oh yes, this is good. So how should we feel when somebody else is glorified? If we're in that consciousness, we can feel just as enthusiastic that person is being empowered by Krishna, and therefore we feel Krishna conscious about it. Anyway, this is a difficult thing to. This is a difficult meditation. Sri Radha Govind, Gokulananda Ki Jai. And so, when we're finding difficulty in glorifying another, this is something where we can understand that we are not capable of actually overcoming that problem on our own. We can make the endeavour. But if we're conscious of taking shelter of Krishna, and we really want to come to that spiritual platform, we can pray for that. Please help me to come to this vision of equanimity, of being able to glorify others and see them on the spiritual platform. And then Krishna can make arrangements for us. He can put us into a situation where we can actually put that into practice. And very quickly we can get rid of this, what is it? It's envy in the heart, isn't it? This envy which is very deep rooted. So we have to be a little thoughtful of devotional service. Devotional service is not meant for, initially, our personal enjoyment. Although when we practice it properly, and we're trying to think on this platform, then we feel that satisfaction automatically. So this is one thing. I remember Rohini Nandan. He was the Bhakta leader in Chaitanya College, and he said one devotee we were getting on the bus to go back after Harinam, and he said, Rohini Nandan ki jai. And everybody went jai. And Rohini Nandan said, cheap jais. What does he mean, cheap jais? It means it's not really founded. It's like it's not really founded in knowledge. He's just saying Rohini Nandan ki jai. But in the Vedic times, they would glorify somebody with knowledge, wouldn't they? They would glorify the king, these bards or these, what they call them, these court jesters. At some point, they would glorify the qualities of the king. And how would the king feel? Would he be embarrassed? Would he be proud? He'd be proud. Why? Because he'd be glorifying his ancestors, and his ancestors were glorified according to the Shastra. And he was thinking how this is linked to Krishna's mercy upon those ancestors, how they were Krishna conscious, and how I'm so fortunate to be born in this particular situation. And therefore he would accept that. But he could tell if somebody was giving cheap jais, then he would. So they had to know what they were doing when they glorified. So a devotee also has to glorify sincerely, not just cheap jais, but glorify according to the actual situation of that devotee. I was thinking about another one that there's one person in Charles Dickens who used to give cheap jais. Who was that? Remember, anybody seen any Charles Dickens plays lately? They used to come on the television at Christmas time, didn't they? I don't know whether they still do or not. Eh? Christmas Carol. What was the cheap joy in Christmas Carol? Anybody remember the name Uriah Heep? You remember that? Uriah Heep, he was very humble. He used to go about like this. It gives you the creeps. And then he'd say, there was this person, I think they called him Mr. Butterfield or Mr. Pickwick, I forget which it were. But he was his aide, he was his clerk. And all the time he was trying to do him out of his business. He was getting him to sign forms. He trusted him so much because he was so humble. Yes, Mr. Butterfield. No, Mr. Butterfield. Like this. And eventually he took all his business away from him. So I see too much glorification, which is not on the proper platform. It's a type of, what is it? Thievery, isn't it? What do they say about when somebody's glorifying too much? They say that it's a sign of a thief, don't they? So there's another point here about that Prabhupada's making in this report about bodily consciousness. So Hiranyakashipu was in bodily consciousness, otherwise he wouldn't have been thinking like he did, thinking that Lord Vishnu is dead. There's a whole subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita from verse 30, right up to 30, explaining about the difference between the body and the soul. Prabhupada, when he was leaving this world, one of the things he said, you are not these bodies. He's preaching this all the way through the Bhagavad Gita, all the way through the Srimad Bhagavatam. He comes to the last lesson in life and he says, we are not these bodies. So, in the end of this particular, in verse 29 of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, I'll read it to you. It says how difficult it is to understand the nature of the soul, the difference between the body and the soul. It says, Ascharya vat pasyat katstit enam, Ascharya vat vedati tateva chanya, Ascharya vat chainam, anya shrinoti, Srut Vapyanam Veda Nacheva Kaschit. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So it's very difficult to understand the soul and act on the platform of the soul. How do we do it? The Gyanis try to do it. The Karmis try to do it by their particular activities. The Yogis try to do it. But they all fall down to material consciousness. So a devotee should not be in that sort of mindset. A karmi is too attached to material life. A jnani is too detached from material life. He's trying to get freed from material life. A yogi is detached, and then when he gets this mystic power, is attached to the material opulences of this mystic power. So how does a devotee see? In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it says a devotee is not too attached or too detached. So to perform devotional service, we have to be on that platform, where we're attached to the body for the service of Krishna. We're detached from the body otherwise. What's that? Anasaktasya vishayan yatarham upayanjita nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yukta vairagam uchyate. That we don't negate anything in devotional service, especially this body. In the past, devotees have completely ruined the body out of service, on the plea of performing service. But now we're learning a bitter lesson. That this body has to be treasured. We're attached to the body for Krishna's service. What's that? How many hours did Prabhupada put into keeping the body together? He spent 2 hours in the morning. He went for a 2-hour walk. He walked 1.5 miles. That was before he gave class in the morning. That's 2 hours out of 24. And then he had an hour's massage later on in the morning after breakfast. And then in the evening, before he took rest, he had another hour's massage. At least 4 hours into just looking after the body, just physically, not just relaxing, but putting physical effort into looking after the body. And so a devotee also has to be aware of that. In our younger life, it's not so apparent. The body tends to rejuvenate pretty quickly. But as it gets older, it needs more and more attention. So we're saving this body for the service of Krishna. And even Dayananda Swami was under illusion, or at least appeared under illusion. He was going through the Jharkhand forest to meet Lord Chaitanya, and he says in Chaitanya Chaitamrita that he contacted a disease through drinking bad water, and all his body became covered with oozing sores. Blood and pus was coming out of the sores. And when Lord Chaitanya met him, he used to embrace him every time. And he got all this pus and blood all over his body. And Sanatana Swami couldn't stand it. And he thought, the Lord, he's putting the Lord through so much difficulty. And he made his determination, I'm going to commit suicide. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, he's the super soul in everybody's heart, and he could understand this. And he told Sanatana Swami, you're thinking of committing suicide. He said, you've surrendered to me. It's not your body to use anymore. It's my body. And personally, I can't do it myself. I need your body to spread Krishna consciousness. So although the Lord can do it all on his own, he's using the devotee in Krishna's service, both to purify the devotee and glorify the devotee. So without this body, we're in pretty difficult situation. So there's two ways to look. The body is useful and it's valuable in Krishna's service. So in this verse actually as well, there's a nice 229. The easiest process of understanding the subject matter of the self, however, is to accept the statements of the Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being deviated by other theories. But it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee, and in no other way. So we're talking about knowing Krishna now. Because why? Because he's talking about taking shelter of a pure devotee. We were talking about the karma yoga process, or the karma kanda process, the jnana process, the yoga process. But when we come to the point of taking shelter of a spiritual master, then very quickly we can understand the nature of the soul and the nature of the Supreme Soul. But actually it's the other way around. When we understand by devotional service Krishna, then we can understand the nature of the soul. It's not a philosophical jugglery. By our mind exercise, just by being fully engaged in devotional service and trying to please Krishna's authority, then automatically we develop this detachment from the bodily consciousness of life. Why? Because we fulfill their desires and we give up our desires in fulfilling their desires, which takes us automatically off the bodily platform. So here this is what Prabhupada is saying in this purport. We come to the Brahma Bhuta platform by many processes. In other words, in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita tells us all the different processes. It says, but they're all useless if the end is not knowledge about the soul. And when we come to the Brahma Bhuta platform, still, it says, Bhakti-yamam abhigan yavan yas chasmitadvaha. We still have to engage in devotional service under the order of a spiritual master. So that's the beauty about this movement. We're not great jnanis or philosophers, but by just having that simple attitude of surrendering to the spiritual master, then everything is actually revealed in due course of time. So one's position is revealed. One understands his position as a soul, not the body. there's one last point here. The result of knowledge. Knowledge brings us to understanding we're not the body, but the soul. We're reading all these, Prabhupada said, we're reading all these books to become fixed in devotional service. Not fixed necessarily in external knowledge. We can read Srila Prabhupada's books and get so much from them. Many people have read a lot of the Vedic scriptures, but they're not actually devotees of the Lord. So what is the sign that we're becoming a devotee by reading these books? What would be put down to being the indication? Very simple indication. I'll give you an example. Roma Harshana Sutta. He took the position of the Vyasasan, Naimisharanya. He took the position first before his son, Sutta Goswami. And when everybody and he was the most learned scholar amongst the sages there, and the sages were coming from all over the universe. So he was well read. And then Lord Balaram came, and he walked into the assembly of devotees, and everybody stood to offer respects to Lord Balaram. And Roma Harshana Sutta, he remained seated. And so, why? Because he sat on the Vyasa and he doesn't have to. But, he'd misunderstood all the scriptures. He didn't realize that, the Supreme Personality of Godhead had walked into the assembly, and the whole purpose of studying Srimad Bhagavatam and giving discourses to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he should have also paid respects. And so, therefore, Lord Balaram, seeing this pride, he'd not become gentle, he says. He'd not become gentle. So the result of knowledge is that we become gentle. We don't become we become learned, but our attitude changes from a materialistic attitude. We start to see things in a different way. We start to see where the mercy is coming from. We become, by following the process of Vaishnava etiquette also, we're able to follow that a lot easier when we develop this proper understanding. Prabhupada said this movement is meant for Brahmins. Brahman is understood that he's on the spiritual platform. He's not seen the bodily platform. This is what it means, Brahman, is seen Brahman. And so what are the qualities of a Brahman, according to Bhagavad Gita? Sama, Dhamma, Tapa, Socham, what else? Jnana, Titikshasva, Shanti Arjavam, honesty, Jnanam, knowledge, Vijnanam, and religiosity. So out of all those 9 qualities, one is knowledge. One is knowledge. And so the real knowledge is Vijnan. Because when we actually put that knowledge into practice, then we get realized knowledge. And then by that realized knowledge, all these other 7 qualities develop. So these are the real qualities of it. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that even if we're not a literary scholar, he says that if we're sincere and we're trying to serve Krishna with devotion, then from within the heart he'll give us the knowledge. So in other words, devotional service is not necessarily a process of acquiring knowledge. It's a process of surrendering the heart to Krishna, and the literatures are there to help us to understand this process of surrender and help us to give that understanding to others, and also to defend the philosophy of the Vaishnava philosophy. But in and of itself, a very simple person can take to devotional service. When Krishna sees the sincerity of heart, that's the main thing. So we can stop there. Does anybody have any questions or comments?